Hey there, it's Kate Swoboda, also known as Kate Courageous. I'm the creator of YourCourageousLife.com, the director of the Courageous Living Coach certification at TeamCLCC.com, and I'm the author of the book The Courage Habit, which is available at booksellers everywhere and, of course, at Amazon. And as you might have guessed, I'm the host of this podcast, the Your Courageous Life podcast. We're going to talk about going after what you want and living a more courageous, emotionally resilient life. I might drop a couple of F-bombs, so don't listen with your kids in the back seat. And here we go. You know how you can have an insight about something and it feels like the world's biggest eureka? Even though technically you know that people have been telling you this or that insight for a while, or maybe you've even logically known it yourself. But for some reason, alchemy happens and you're like, whoa, I get this in a huge way that I didn't get it before. That's how I'm feeling right now. So I'm very excited to come here today because whenever I have one of those moments where I'm suddenly getting something on another level, the only thing better than getting it myself is helping other people to get it, which, basically explains how I became a life coach and a self-help author and all that good stuff. So here's the big thing that I got. I got this huge insight around compromising myself and how I think we as people compromise ourselves. Now, for everything that I'm talking about in today's podcast on how to stop compromising yourself, this all feels new. It feels really true. It feels really aligned. It's not just me yakking about me. I'm also seeing in making this connection all of these places with friends, with clients. I've been gabbing about it excitedly with girlfriends. But a lot of credit has to go to two places in particular. One is the coach Leanne Raymond, who I've been working with for the past year. And the other is the incredible author Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I got to tell you a little bit about my background with this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, because it is this book that over the years I've seen so many people just go gaga over, and they're like, oh my God, this book is so good. And I've picked up the book before, and I've kind of thumbed through it before, in over in the bookstore. I have a little book addiction going on, and, it doesn't take a lot of arm twisting for me to get another one. But I would pick up this book and I'd just be like, huh? Like myths? Wild woman archetype? Huh? What? It's just like, okay, like, all right. And I kind of flipped through it. And the part of me that was an English major in undergrad, if you're an English major, you're going to spend a fair amount of your time reading stories and then trying to understand the symbolic themes and the archetypes that make up those stories. And the part of me that was an English major just kind of looked at the book and went, yeah, it feels like school. It feels like it feels like I need to pay attention to the symbolism here because I'm going to have to write a report later. And now I'm understanding that, it's one of those books that gets you when you're ready. You don't make the connection until you're ready, and that's fine. I remember being that way about Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now as well. Everybody was going crazy about his book, and I get it, and I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade here, but I think this is so boring. So I think that sometimes self-help can be that way. Until we're ready, it just seems like, huh? Or this is so boring. And then once you're ready, it's like, oh my God, I'm obsessed. I can't get enough, which is how I felt about The Power of Now, and now how I feel about Women Who Run with the Wolves. So there's this story in Women Who Run with the Wolves, and the entire book takes common stories within our culture and stories that really have been common among many cultures, just sometimes with different little thematic elements. And it looks at the role of women, and it looks at the role of obstacle for women. And I think it's talking about archetypal women. It can apply to men too. It can apply to any gender. It's just particularly relevant for the way many women are raised. So there's this chapter, and I would not recommend, by the way, skipping straight to any chapter in this. I would go in order myself personally. But there is a chapter on self-preservation, and the archetypal story that is brought up in that self-preservation chapter is the red shoes. And it's a story about a girl who's very poor. And even though she's poor, she's finding her own way, and she's taking these little scraps of cloth that she has left over after she does other people's mending, and she fashions them into, she has these little scraps of red cloth in particular, and she fashions them into a pair of red shoes. And they're kind of bedraggled and, scrappy because they're made out of scraps. They're not fancy, but they're her own. And she's basically kind of making her way in life. And then the appealing prospect is before her of having someone who is going to be her patron. An older woman comes in and says, I will take care of you, or older rich woman. But if the girl agrees to be taken care of by this woman, she's going to have to sacrifice something, because the old woman has some rules. She's a very rich old woman, but she's got some rules. One of the things that the girl finds she's going to have to sacrifice or give up are these beautiful red shoes that she wanted so badly for herself. And I won't get too much farther into the story. There are lots of different layers, and I think it's better if you explain it yourself. But the comparison that ends up getting made here is about the kinds of compromises that we will willingly enter into when we have gone for too long being hungry. And of course, in the story, it's a literal hunger. This girl has struggled. She's struggled a lot in her own way, even though she's making her own way. But how that shiny object over there must glisten when we have struggled. I was thinking about that in part because, as I've mentioned here, I run a life coach training program. And there's this way in which I found that new coaches in particular, a couple months after starting their coaching business, and I definitely went through this too, it's like things get really hard because, coaching is a business that you build just like any other. You build it one client at a time. It's not snap your fingers and boom, you have everything you ever want. You want to become a graphic designer? You're going to build it one client at a time. You want to become a lawyer? You're going to build it one client at a time. Become a life coach? You're going to build it one client at a time. I don't care what any marketing person on Facebook says. There are definitely things you can learn to make it easier for yourself, but you're going to have some growing pains. And that salary job with all of its trappings that, people want to escape in order to be their own boss. A couple months of being your own boss, and that salary job with its steady work and its salary and its, conformity suddenly doesn't seem so bad. Suddenly doesn't seem so, soul-sucking and wretched. And isn't that the compromise that many of us are willing to make at times? All right, fine. I compromise. I won't play life by my own rules. I will conform. So let me tell you a little bit more about this how to stop compromising yourself thing, okay? So I was starting to sketch out a couple of pieces here on a piece of paper. Like, how do we break some of this down and look at its component parts? Because basically, I had this eureka moment. I had this situation where I was tolerating some behavior that I really didn't like. And tolerating is a very strong word, because what I kept noticing, and when I would talk about the problem that I was in with friends of mine, is I would say, it doesn't feel nourishing. Something feels off. Something doesn't feel right. I notice that my cup is not filled. And I find it so interesting all these weeks, months later, to realize that I was speaking even in food metaphors at that time, nourishing, cup filled. But in essence, I kept feeling like something was off. And I would look at the other person involved in the situation. I would try to figure out like what her behavior was that wasn't working for me. But then I'd look at the behavior objectively and I'd kind of go, but technically I can tell that there's nothing objectively wrong with this behavior. It's more of a feeling. Something feels off. What feels off? And I'm like going crazy here, basically, causing my own crazy making, I should say, feeling like something's not quite right and not knowing how to articulate it, how to put it into a context. And what I have come to understand about that situation and a whole host of others is this: that it was a place where I was denying that I was hungry. I was hungry. I was only being fed crumbs. I was accepting the crumbs and going, well, I'm being fed. How dare I want more? How dare I ask for more? I don't want to be needy. I don't want to be pathetic. I don't want to be insecure. I don't want to be clingy. I don't want to be demanding. I don't want to be a diva. I don't want to be, needy is the word that comes up over and over and over. And there's this way in which two questions have really emerged for me in the parceling out of what's happening here that I think could be really helpful for anyone else as well. Because once I took this understanding of this place where I compromised myself because I was hungry, and then I compensated for it by accepting things that I would normally not have been okay with, and that even in my soul, something was off, something wasn't right. I was compromising something that didn't feel good to me. I was trying to be satisfied on crumbs and make that compromise okay. I've gone to my husband now, I've gone to friends now, in my business now, I'm asking myself these two questions. Where do you deny your hunger? Where do you deny that you're hungry at all? And where do you pretend that the crumbs are okay? Take a moment now and think for yourself about a situation in your life that doesn't feel good. A friendship, a marriage, a conflict with somebody else, your relationship with your parents, with your in-laws, your career, your health. Where do you deny your hunger? Your hunger for something more, your desire for something more. Where do you deny that? Because you don't want to be too needy, too clingy, too pathetic, too insecure, too demanding, too much of a diva. And in many of those situations, where do you compromise yourself? Where do you accept a compromise that actually doesn't really work for you? In other words, where do you pretend that the crumbs are okay? Think about that same situation. Where do you deny your hunger? Where do you pretend that the crumbs are okay? Now, the last Your Courageous Life podcast, episode 20, is all about taking self-responsibility. It's been a theme lately. And one of the biggest things I came to realize in this challenging situation that I was in, that I kind of had, what sparked this eureka moment, reading The Red Shoes, reading Women Who Run with the Wolves, what really came together was that these two questions are all about the kind of self-responsibility that I'm really into. Because for as much as I was in this challenging situation that didn't feel right, and I was looking to the other person's behavior and I was going, why does something feel off? What is this person doing that just doesn't feel right? Something doesn't feel quite right. What I've come to understand is that they weren't really doing anything. They were doing them. And what I was doing was denying that I wanted something different, more, shifted, better. And I was pretending that the crumbs were okay. I was going, don't want to be unreasonable. And that is the thing that is such a momentous shift. And that's where something really powerful can happen here. because there's a kind of shame that I realized I was feeling about wanting more. This is another piece of where we compromise ourselves. It's like the compromising of ourself has these pieces that come before the moment when we actually settle for something less. And the pieces have to do with shame we feel about wanting more. The pieces have to do in some cases with not thinking that we really deserve more. Who am I to be asking for more? And then, of course, there's the fear of famine. If I ask for more, then I'll be left with nothing. So I'd better at least take these crumbs because nothing would be worse off. And we go into that mindset without even considering that it is truly a betrayal of the self to adopt that attitude. Because if I am in relationship with someone, if I have a job, if I have anything in my life with someone else, and it is an affront to my soul at the worst end of things, that totally soul sucking, this is like harmful experience, or just really not quite the right fit, like having shoes or a dress or something that's just too tight or really itchy that you just kind of can't wait to get off because it's just comfortable enough that you could wear it, but like it really doesn't feel so good. On the best end of things, that's how it feels. We go through life telling ourselves, if I don't have this or that thing or this or that person or this or that situation, I will be left with nothing. And we forget that if we are left with ourselves, that is not nothing. It is not that if we make the choice to let go of something that isn't quite a match, we will be left with nothing. It is that we will be left with ourselves. And it is that being left with yourself is in fact a good choice. It is in fact a better choice than trying to squeeze your way into a too tight pair of shoes, or a too tight life, or a too tight marriage, or a too tight friendship, or a too tight whatever. It's hard for me to talk about some of this without my own inner critic popping up and going, well, but you don't want to be one of those entitled divas, because, haven't we all met those people, right? And entitled diva stuff, it is a wound. I get that. I have compassion for the wound. At the same time that anytime I've needed to deal with somebody else's wound and they're like this really entitled diva, I don't really like it. So, of course, it makes sense that my critic would be popping in with like, oh, but you don't want to be that entitled diva who has to have things just so. You don't want to be so precious, so sensitive, so. But in truth, here's what I understand. When my needs are met, I have more to give. And I'm not talking about rampantly needing more, needing it to be my way. Control, if you really think about it, doesn't feel good. It's a short-lived feeling good. Like control kind of sort of feels good, but if you're actually paying attention to like the cost on other people's lives and the way it damages connection in your own life and that tight feeling of always needing to monitor the situation to make sure you're in control, it doesn't actually feel good. So I'm not talking about control, which is really what that like diva, super sensitive, gotta have it every way that I want it thing is really about. I'm talking about something that is richer than that. And it is that when I am in the driver's seat of getting my own needs met, when I am not siphoning off and parceling out little pieces of my energy to try to make it okay that those too small shoes are on my feet, even though they pinch over and over, when I'm not in that space, when I'm not sitting there worrying about too tight shoes, I'm just living life and I'm good. And I actually have a lot more space to be flexible. I have a lot more space to go, oh, that did not happen the way I thought it would happen. I don't think I like that. All right, let me step back. Let me pause. Let me breathe. What do I want to have happen here? By contrast, when I've been going for too long in those too tight shoes, I'm more likely to snap when the unexpected happens. Instead of rolling with it and taking a breath and going, well, what do we want to do here? Someone else has a different idea. When I've been compromising for too long, when I've been hungry for too long, when I've been only eating crumbs for too long, that's actually when I'm less likely to be accommodating in the ways that it's helpful for humans to be accommodating. The metaphor of hunger around how we compromise ourselves is such an apt metaphor, because all of us have experienced that when we're hungry, we're not normal people. Like Snickers has made a whole commercial series out of it, right? Like who you become when you're starving. It's not you. You get gritchety, you get angry, you get hangry, you get grumpy, you get snippy. That's not who you actually are at your core. It's how you behave when you're really hungry. So it's a beautiful lens to start putting on life. Like, oh, any place in my life where I'm not proud of my behavior, where I feel needy and insecure, is it possible that this is a place where I have a hunger for something that is being denied by others, or that I am denying myself? The diva model, if we go with a comparison there, the diva model, when the diva gets hungry, she would start demanding that other people acquiesce to her needs and fill her hungers and do everything that she's supposed to do. I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about looking at your life and going, I'm hungry, and I've been expecting other people to nourish me in some way, or I've been expecting a situation or a set of circumstances to nourish me in some way. And actually what I need to do is I need to be responsible for nourishing myself. And I need to request nourishment from people or from circumstances where there is nourishment to give. I cannot keep expecting that I will go to the same people or go to the same circumstances to get the nourishment I need. And then they feed me crumbs and then I'm mad at them for that. It doesn't work. What I'm starting to understand about the ways that I've been compromising myself is that the self-imposed hunger, the reining it in, the holding myself back, the not wanting to be too much, the not wanting to ask for too much, is actually where it all begins. There's this tendency for me to think, for every perfectionist to think, for every person who's been caught in the grip of not enough to think, if I could do it better, if I could figure this out, if I could set up a plan, if I had the right strategy, if I had the right external circumstances, if they would change, I would be okay. Perfectionism thrives on that. Not enoughness thrives on that. If I could be better, or if something outside of me could better, everything would be okay. No. Because if you have gone without food for too long, it does not matter what's going on out there. And if you are depriving yourself of food, of the essential nourishment that you need, there is no strategy that is going to overlook that. If you skip an actual meal in your life, are you happy? No. Would it matter if you have a perfect schedule with like enough time for all of the things on your to-do list? If you're actually hungry because you've been skipping meals? No. Would it matter how productive you are? No. Would it matter how many likes you have on Facebook? No. So where it actually starts is not with going, what is my 5-part plan for leaving this job so that I can be in a better career? Where it actually starts is not looking at your husband or wife or partner and saying, you know what, I've decided I'm not going to take it anymore. You've got to change. Where it actually starts is where we compromise ourselves, where we pretend that we are not as hungry as we are, or where we pretend that the crumbs are okay. That's what I want to invite all of us to step into more. When we start working on a new skill, one that we haven't had as much time to be with and think about, there's often this place where it's like standing up on wobbly legs. And when you stand up on wobbly legs that haven't developed their muscles yet, you're going to fall back down. So this is the commitment that I'm making as I step into this space myself. Total compassion when I fall down. In fact, I want to feed myself metaphorically when I fall down. When you fall down, what kind of nourishment do you need? Maybe it's touch, hugs. Maybe it's verbal support or encouragement. Maybe it's taking another action step as soon as possible because there's something gritty in you that's like, yeah, I fell down, but I'm getting back up and trying again. And that's really enlivening. Maybe you need time to cry. But when I fall down, and I'm going to invite you to do this with me, when you fall down around compromising yourself, when you realize, oh, I did it again. I did not give my true yes or true no. I said that this was okay when it really wasn't. I kept my mouth shut when I saw something that was a violation. I didn't honor my own boundaries. I didn't respect my own limits. I looked the other way. When somebody asked me not to see or name what was going on, I colluded with them. I didn't name it. I didn't see it. All those ways that we compromise ourselves. In that moment, when we realize that's what we've done again, we don't need a new strategy or to work harder. We need nourishment because the compromising is born out of being undernourished. Nourished people, people who feel like their cup is full, do not frantically look around at the world trying to figure out how to get needs met. I need a drink. I need my cup to be full. People, when they're hungry, behave completely differently than when they're sated. I want to live life sated. And I want to live life with the best food for me. And of course, we can talk literally, but really metaphorically, what is the food that your soul needs for nourishment here? Because as far as I can tell in my own life, I have never made a bad choice when I was actually nourishing myself emotionally. I can't think of a single bad choice I've made when I was emotionally nourished. Can you? Even the ones that are hard, even the ones that felt difficult, I can see how those were the choices that I could really claim wholeheartedly. So here's to us doing this together, standing up on these new wobbly legs, deciding that our lives are worth more than compromise. And realizing that when we fulfill our hungers, when we are nourishing ourselves, we don't even need to compromise. Thanks for listening and being with me as I'm figuring this out alongside you. I was super excited to come here and share it, though. I hope you'll share this with other people too, this idea, and take these two questions into your life. Where do I deny my hunger? Where do I pretend the crumbs are okay? And if you want to find me on social media and tell me how it's going, I'd love to hear it. I'm at Your Courageous Life on Facebook and on Instagram. I'm Kate Courageous. Have a great rest of your day, and I hope that we can connect.